You know, we usually think of the law as this set of rigid, dusty old rules written on parchment somewhere. But what if that parchment were alive? In this explainer, we're going to explore the law as exactly that, a living parchment. It's a source of this really fascinating paradox where unshakable promises actually create the very space we need for freedom to flourish.
And that brings us to the core question, doesn't it? Does the law just lock us up in a cage of obligations, or does it unlock our potential, open doors to who we can become? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is somehow both.
All right, let's get into it. First up, we're going to look at the law as this absolute binding force. This is the idea of the law as a promise that once you make it, it simply cannot be broken. This is the binding word.
So picture this. We're in late 19th century London, and there's this product called the carbolic smoke ball. The company made this incredibly bold promise in a newspaper ad. They said, use our product, and if you still get the flu, we'll pay you a £100 reward. Well, a woman named Mrs. Carlyle did just that. And she got sick. The company tried to wiggle out of it, saying their ad was just mere puffery, but the court, they didn't see it that way. That public promise became a kind of golden bird cage. It was beautiful, sure, but it was inescapable, trapping the very company that built it.
And this is the detail that really sealed their fate. They didn't just talk the talk, they put their money where their mouth was. This one line from their own ad, boasting about a £1,000 deposit in the bank, proved to the court that this wasn't just empty marketing hype. It was a serious offer made to the whole world. And by using the smoke ball, Mrs. Carlyle had accepted it. Just like that, an advertisement became a binding contract.
What's amazing is how this very same idea of an unbreakable promise can be scaled up, way up. Here, we're jumping from a commercial product to the very soul of a nation. In India, the Supreme Court was facing this absolutely monumental question. Can the government change the constitution so much that it basically destroys its core principles? The court's answer was a huge, resounding no. And that decision gave birth to something called the basic structure doctrine. It's this incredibly powerful idea that a constitution isn't just some legal document you can edit whenever you feel like it. No, it's a sacred promise to the people, one that has a noble and grand vision. And that vision, its essential heart, is like a crystal mountain, a foundation so fundamental that no government, no matter how powerful, can ever move it or break it.
So you start to see the pattern, right? The law builds these incredibly strong structures of binding promises. It tells power what it cannot do, it forges cages, and it raises mountains. But that's only half the story. Because the other side of this coin is the breathing space, the freedom for people to do what they must be free to do.
And now we get to the big why. Why are these rigid, unshakable promises so important? Well, it turns out their entire purpose is to guard the open spaces where our society, our debates, and our very identities are allowed to grow and to change. Let's head to the United States during the height of the civil rights movement. The New York Times ran an ad criticizing the police, but it had a few minor factual mistakes. A city commissioner sued for libel, and if he had won, it could have had a huge chilling effect, making news outlets terrified to report on controversial stuff. The Supreme Court realized that public debate itself needed to be protected.
The court's solution was brilliant. They created what they famously called breathing space. They ruled that for a public official to win a libel suit, they had to prove actual malice, that the publisher knew it was false or was just totally reckless. The insight here is pretty profound. For free expression to actually survive, it has to have room to be imperfect. Think about it. Robust debate, just like breathing, can't be sterile.
Okay, our next journey takes us to post-apartheid South Africa. Here, the new constitutional court had this massive task of building a new society, one based on dignity and equality for all. They took a look at these old laws that criminalized private relationships between consenting adults, and when they struck them down, they redefined privacy as something much more than just the right to be left alone. It was the protected space we all need to form relationships, to love, and to define our own identities.
And this is the beautiful logic that ties it all together. The court basically said that true equality isn't about forcing everyone into the same box. It's about protecting our right to be different. The law's job isn't to enforce some single version of what's normal. It's to create a space that's safe enough for every individual constellation to shine.
So how do these two powerful and, let's face it, seemingly opposite ideas, the binding word and the breathing space, how do they actually work together? How does the cage end up supporting the open air?
Well, this is it. This is the architecture of justice. It's this incredible paradox. The law creates a golden birdcage of a public promise to hold power accountable. It raises a crystal mountain of core values to make the state unshakable in its commitments. And why does it do all this? So that each of us can have the cloud lungs to speak freely and the constellation mirror to reflect who we truly are. The rigid structures are there for one reason: to protect our most profound freedoms. It binds the strong so that the rest of us have space to breathe.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The law isn't some static relic from the past. It's a living document, a story that every single generation gets to continue writing. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What binding promises and what breathing spaces are we writing onto that parchment right now?